Lilley is the author of 3 poetry collections, Endlings, If There Were Roads, and The Fleece Era. That's a funny title. Which was nominated for the Fred Cogswell Award for Excellence in Poetry. Her novel, Worry Stones, was longlisted for the Caledonia Novel Award, and she's also the author of a short story collection, The Birthday Books. Joanna has been giving readings and workshops as far afield as Alaska and Iceland. Originally from Britain, Joanna now lives in Whitehorse, Yukon, on the traditional territories of the Kwanlundun First Nation and the Ta'an-Kwachan Council.
I'm going to read some poems from my latest poetry collection. It's called Endlings, and it came out, well, I got the box of books on the 13th of March, which was 2 days after the pandemic was declared a pandemic anyway. So of course all my events were cancelled, and I'm so grateful to be here. It's just fantastic to connect. Yeah, I'm in Whitehorse, so I'm north of BC, 1,000 miles north of Vancouver, as the raven flies. So a long way away. So I just really appreciate being able to be here. It's fantastic, and see some familiar faces, which is lovely, and lots of new faces too. So it's just wonderful. And thank you for all the volunteer effort. I know how much effort goes into these things, so I'm really grateful. So this book, it's all about extinction. So there's a definite theme, and about half the poems are about species that no longer exist because of what humans have done, and then about half are no longer exist through, more natural means, you might say, that other mass extinctions before we came along, and evolution and so on. So I'm going to start off reading a poem about de-extinction, which is a really interesting theme or area of work that's going on, and people are trying to bring certain species back to life. And I'm in no way a scientist, so I have to kind of read the popular science version of all of this. So this poem, it's about the woolly mammoth, which I thought would be fun to start with, because I'm kind of in the landscape of the woolly mammoth up here. And the woolly mammoth, I think everyone pretty much knows, but they were about the size, I think, of the African elephant today, and kind of ended up, it sort of died out around 4,000 years ago. They lasted a little bit longer on Wrangell Island in Alaska than they did everywhere else, sort of on the mainland. So this is called Necrofauna. The elephant didn't ask to give birth to a woolly mammoth. Yet when the infant dropped to the concrete floor, she kicked it, pulled its head up, trunk to trunk, until it breathed. She hoiked her daughter to her feet, nudged her from slippery blood and the splattered embryonic sac until she walked. The mother slid her trunk along her strange calf's hairy skin, sniffing her peculiar hump, her tiny ears. We think we know about elephants, their memories, matriarchies, their heavy hearts and brains, how they stay with the dead, and woolly mammoths, hundreds of them frozen in the north, melting in our laboratories. We know their chilly habitat, their 4-inch fat, the curved 5-meter tusks they dug with, the tough, dry grasses they ground with blunt, enameled teeth, the cat who ate them. What memories of the tundra steppe have been rebirthed? Will this new two-breed yearn for cold or heat? Set free, will she go south or north? So the next poem I'm going to read is about the Javan tiger. And I think, it's been interesting having this book sort of out in the world on the cusp and during a pandemic, because obviously it's not the most uplifting of themes. And sometimes I feel it's just too much to be reading about extinction, but then sometimes it feels like just the right thing to do when we almost feel as if humans could end up becoming extinct at the rate we're going as well. And I suppose that's the thing with poetry. It manages to address every kind of state that we find ourselves in. So this poem, it's about the Javan tiger, and that particular tiger. I think there's 9 subspecies of tiger, and this particular one was listed as extinct in 2003, so much more recent, and definitely extinct because of us, unfortunately. Lived on Java, and I think we took away its habitat, we hunted it, all the usual things, unfortunately. But I also want to say, I just want to say a bit of good news. There is apparently, and I've written it down so don't forget, there are about 3,900 tigers still in the world, and they're generally stable as an overall species. So let's not give up hope for the tiger just yet. So this poem, and it's much shorter than the introduction I've just given, it's called Beauty. There's a rumor about beauty, its long whiskers and golden eyes, its stripes as dark as the moon shadows of trees. There's a rumor that the forest took the beauty, that the people who took the forest took the beauty. The beauty's stripes tightened, sliced right through. The people said they had nothing to do with it. The whiskers caught fire and the golden eyes burned right through. And that was one of those poems that came fairly quickly in the initial draft, and then I spent lots of time as usual tweaking it. Sometimes it takes years and years and decades for a poem to kind of emerge, and then sometimes they seem to come out quickly, and then you don't have to spend quite as much time. So I wrote this poem reasonably quickly, but then the penny didn't drop immediately. That I think it's very much inspired by Tiger, Tiger, Burning Bright, William Blake, which is one of the most famous poems. So then I start to worry that I've kind of stolen some essence of another poet's poem, but I still like to read it because it feels like a bit of a tribute to that wonderful poem that's so powerful. Okay, so I'm going to read a poem about one of the species that definitely became extinct, nothing to do with us, just to kind of change the perspective a little bit. And this poem is about Desmostylus hesperus, which was kind of like a hippopotamus that existed. It lived for about 21 million years. It existed a long, long time, which I just find amazing. And so it was in existence about 28 million years ago, up to about 7 million years ago. And even those numbers are kind of hard to get your head around sometimes. So it was a herbivore, a mammal, and it liked to wallow in the water, as do I. So I kind of felt a lot of kinship with this animal as I was wanting to write about this species. And in some of these poems, I tried to imagine what it would be like to be that creature, which I really, really enjoyed doing. It felt like a privilege somehow to try and do that. And it lived in the kind of Pacific coastlines on either side of the Pacific Ocean. Water diviner. Sand or shingle, sliding in. I am burly, broad, firm-footed. I have found my rock to straddle, slosh, and anchor. Water sleep is a sluggish grace for those who are bulky on land. Water is the color of me, flat-headed, only my eyes and nostrils popping the surface tension. Low-bellied, forelegs right-angled, braced. I aim my trowel head at mud roots. I move up the estuary for the food I know I eat, though my stone-turned bones won't tell. I bequeath my bullet-case teeth, my cask of ribs, my spine of wooden cotton reels, my neck as thick and cluttered as a fir cone. My genes will perish with my progeny, yet I am elephant, I am hippopotamus, I am every swim and wallow in the cooling waters of the ring of fire. So I'll read a couple more poems and then maybe see how we're doing for time. So this next poem is a kind of a rare one in the collection in that it's about a species that still exists. I have a couple. So I started off with this project to write a collection poem about extinct animals. And then I'm not very good at kind of I'm not very disciplined. So, and then of course, as I was reading about it, all these other themes and ideas pop into your head. So there's a scattering of poems about species that still exist, and poems that are just more generally on the extinction theme. And then sometimes I have a couple of poems about humans, because of course, yeah, as I say, we're on a pretty steady path to extinction, I often think. So this poem is about the northern white rhinoceros, which still exists. However, there are only 2 females left of this particular subspecies. And this poem is about the last male, Sudan, who you may have heard about, because everyone was extremely aware that he was the last male, and he died on the 19th of March in 2018. And he was one of these animals that I'm sure you've seen online. You see guards basically guarding certain animals, so they, like rhinoceros, so they don't get their horns stolen, that kind of thing. So this is that kind of scenario. So this is called White. The best job in the world is the worst job in the world. You scratch behind his ears. You slot hay into his letterbox mouth. You give him a belly rub. He's the last male northern white rhinoceros in the world, and you're stroking his sagging tarpaulin skin. You carry a gun. The poachers want his horns, even though they've been partly sawn off to try to protect him. You don't put down the gun when you flap your hands. When you flap your hands, the rhinoceros runs. He likes to play and run. He likes to be visited. The vet comes often now, that the last male northern white rhinoceros's belly is always on the ground. His semen is safely stored. There are plans and funding drives. The vet will come today. You won't put down your gun. You'll make sure that what's left of the last male northern white rhinoceros's horns rot in the earth beside his banisters of bone and Carhartt hide. So yeah, I'll read this next poem, as I say, and then check in about the time. So this is one of the poems which is more generally on the theme of extinction. And I apologize if anyone's feeling kind of gloomy after hearing these poems. I kind of as I say, it felt like a real privilege to kind of connect with all these creatures, and I wanted the poems to kind of be an elegy as well as an exercise in grieving. Anyway, so this one is called It Won't Hurt. It won't hurt letting all the animals go. That's the surprise. If you feel anything at all as you close the lid, you'll just feel terribly tired. If you feel anything at all as you walk on without closing the gate, you'll just feel terribly sad. You won't have to do anything different. You'll still sleep and eat as much as you can. You may even be already lying down. You can try it each night. Let each hoof, antennae, tail rise to the dark, invisible ceiling. When the exhale ceases, delay the inhale. Don't swallow. Let the fluids accumulate. Feel the finishing. Thank you. How am I doing? I'm very happy to end there because I don't want to take up too much time.
No, you're not taking up too much time. I'm loving the poems, and I'm so happy you get a chance. That must have been very frustrating. Well, there's a lot of frustrating things with COVID-19, but that must have been one of them, in that you're like getting your book out, and then suddenly like, oh
no. It's just in my cupboard behind me. It's just I have all my boxes of them. Yeah.
Could you show us the cover?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, it's a wonderful.
Yeah, a little closer.
Yes.
Oh.
It's an illustration by Mary Anning, who was a 19th century paleontologist in the UK, and she was amazing because she was not of the class that would become, a scientist, and she was obviously a woman as well, but she would discover fossils on the beach in Lyme Regis where she lived, and eventually became recognized by the establishment. It took a long time. Anyway, this is these are her sketches of the plesiosaur, this enormous creature found on the beach. Yeah, so I was so happy when the publisher Turnstone, who were amazing, came up with this idea, because I read a book about Mary Anning when I was a child, and we used to go to that beach when I was little as a family and find fossils and things. So yeah, it's lovely.
That's amazing. Then you have it on the cover of your book.
Yeah, and they didn't know that, so it was perfect. Yeah.
Do we have some questions? I'm not very good at seeing what's happening. There's a lot of things.
Someone asked for the name of the hippopotamus in one of the earlier poems.
Oh, yeah, okay. Desmostylus hesperus. I got to check I got that right.
I try to spell that in chat, but I'm not a good speller.
Yeah, Desmostylus hesperus. I can write it in a minute. Yeah. I mean, a lot of these animals have common names, but of course, the further back you go, of course, they don't. So then you.
Hey, Jennifer, you have a question? You have to unmute yourself, please.
That was a question, the one about the name of the creature. So thank you.
Okay, great. Hello, Jennifer.
Any other questions? If someone could help me, if I can't see them.
Fiona has one in chat. How did this book begin, and what was the origin of this book?
Yeah, it's a good question, isn't it? Where do these things come from? I think I have just always cared about animals all my life, and stopped eating them and all of those usual things. And I just had the idea. I was actually at Sage Hills, and I think most of you will be familiar. It's a writing retreat, and I was working on another project, and I just suddenly had this idea to write poems just about extinct animals, because I was feeling so heartbroken about all of the animals disappearing, and just to connect with them in that way, as I've mentioned. Yeah, so that was actually in 2013. And I had other projects on the go. And of course, with this one, I had to do an awful lot of research. As I say, I am in no way a scientist. And my poetry before that had not been as focused and disciplined. So I was lucky. I got some funding to go off to natural history museums, and I met a great orc, and then went behind the scenes in a couple of museums as well, which was fantastic, and saw some exhibits. And then that you can see videos online of some species that died out more recently, which is absolutely amazing and heartbreaking. And yeah, so it was a long project in the making, but I actually feel quite sad that it's over, and I want to still write about animals. Yeah, I kind of miss that project. Yeah.
Well, I
don't know if I've answered your question. Sorry, Fiona.
You can write about animals as long as you want.
Okay, thank you. Good.
Yeah. Any other questions happening? Nefertiti. Mute. You're muted.
Joanna, I'm a big fan of yours and what you write about. I wanted to know, when you mentioned human beings going extinct, did you write about like the older versions, the hominids, the Australopithecus, or did you write about us going extinct?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think us, really. There's one poem about the cave bear, which mentions earlier species or subspecies of humans, but it was more, I think, about the current situation that we're in, and it's really it's more of an underlying theme, than specific poems about humans. There's one about a human that was found in one of the glaciers up here several years ago, which was very exciting, because the local First Nations, which is Champagne-Ajac First Nation, was able to trace their heritage, genealogy back to that person over a few hundred years. Yeah, it's a good question, and that gives me ideas to write about extinct branches of our human evolution as well. That would be exciting.
Do you have poems about like the mall walker, the modern human
Right.
shopping kind of human.
Yeah. Well, I think it sounds like you have some poems you could write
Oh,
on this
no.
theme.
Not
That's
on that.
great. Great ideas. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't actually. I thought you might.
Yeah. No, but no, you're giving me ideas. Thank you. Yeah.
Great questions now for TD. Any other questions? I had one actually. So you talked about enjoying embodying different animals when you were writing. Was there one particular animal that you were thought to yourself, man, I could write within this body for a long time, and I might still write some poems? Like, was there one animal that in particular?
I think I like that question. I think with all of them, I felt like I could have kept going. I have a poem, quite a long poem about the great auk, and it's more of a story about, well, 3 or 4 particular great auks, like a little family, and I really wanted to keep writing about them because they're such amazing creatures and they died out in such a horrendous way. Yeah, so I think the great auk definitely. And I did, when I saw one at the Smithsonian, which feels like a parallel universe now. The idea you used to be able to go and go into museums and so on in other countries. It was really fantastic to see a great auk, kind of a stuffed great auk, but yeah, they're just beautiful creatures. So that one in particular, I think, yeah, maybe I could write a novel or something one day about great auks. So nobody might read it except me, but that would be okay. Yeah.
I think you'd have some readers.